of MySmartPlans. We're located here in Kansas City, and today we are going to be talking to Mr. I call you Bill. I mean, your name's William, but okay. Mr. Quatman, he is a construction mediator. We'll talk a little bit about him, and just do a little quick introduction for yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks, Shelley. I'm Bill Quatman. I'm with Quatman ADR, which is my new business. I was formerly general counsel for Burns & McDonnell Engineering Company for the past 13 years. And before that, I had a 20-plus year career in construction litigation, handling design and construction disputes for a variety of owners, AEs, contractors, subs, nationwide.
So, okay, this is my first thought that comes to my mind is that, have you heard a million excuses?
No.
No, I'm saying like whenever somebody comes to you for, yeah, you're like.
Excuses. I thought that was like a podcast or something, a million excuses.
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm thinking of like your profession, like you've heard a million excuses, like the cat ate my homework, right?
You know, yeah, sure. So nobody wants to take blame anymore. Everybody wants to blame somebody else. And that's why lawyers like me exist, is because for the most part, designers and contractors blame each other for disputes on a project, and the owner gets caught in the middle. Thus, you know, the need for construction lawyers and arbitrators and mediators to resolve those disputes.
Yeah. Well, so curiosity. So when did you retire? Just recently, right?
I retired in March of 2021, right?
Yeah, well, it's so funny because I saw you on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to have coffee. And you were like, tell me again, Shelley, what do you do? I'm like, okay. Yeah. So anyway, we just had coffee the other day and reconnected. So it was exciting. I followed you with your careers. So we've been in business for almost 15 years. So it was that long ago. So did you know Dominic? I mean, is that how we connected originally, you think?
I think so. I think through his painting company, I think I knew of him and probably met you at a Builders Association meeting somewhere along the way.
Yeah, probably.
So 15 years you started up is when I was in-house at Burns & McDonnell, and you developed your practice here in Kansas City. I was a bit removed from the Kansas City construction community for my time at Burns & McDonnell, because most of their work is outside of Kansas City, as is yours now. But most of our projects were outside the city. That's changing a lot. Burns & Mac is doing a lot more work in the city, and you'll see Burns & McDonnell cranes downtown now doing some projects that are pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I see a crane. I'm always so curious. Like, first of all, I'm curious about the guy that's sitting up there in the crane. Yeah. And why is he okay with it moving? Because like the arch in St. Louis, you know, you go up it and it's moving and you're like, this is not okay with me. So I'm always intrigued about that. But more importantly, just the projects are just so intriguing. Some of the stuff we see is just so amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So what is your number one thing that you get the phone call for? Like if I'm going to call and say, hey, Bill, I'm the general contractor and you are not going to believe what happened. What would be that phone call? What would that sound like?
Right. So today in my practice as arbitrator mediator, my calls come mostly from lawyers who already have a dispute brewing and they want me to help them resolve it either through an arbitration hearing or through a mediated settlement. But when I was in private practice as a lawyer, you know, the phone calls were all over the board. You know, at my point in my career, I've been doing this for 40 years plus. My time as an architect. I'm a licensed architect as well, Shelley, as you probably know. And I did that for a short time before I went to law school. And, you know, at this point, I've probably heard about everything at least once. There's not many things I haven't come across in the industry in terms of disputes. But, you know, fortunately, most disputes are not life endangering kind of things. I mean, those happen in the industry and it's unfortunate, but there are still fatalities and workplace injuries that happen. But more and more it's payment disputes, you know, change order, usually because a contractor didn't carefully read the plans and specs, or the plans and specs had a bust in them, which happens a lot. And there was some design error or omission, and that is caused by a lot of different things that happen in fast track projects, and just the pressure to get plans and specs issued for bidding by the owner's deadline when they may be not coordinated. I think that's probably a very common thing in traditional construction, is the architects base plan that was sent out to the mechanical and structural consultants for their overlay isn't current with the current architectural plan. So you get a bust, you know. And then designers say, well, the contractors should have pointed that out in the bidding process. We could have explained it with a supplemental instruction. But oftentimes those errors and omissions or those inconsistencies don't pop up until you're in the field and you realize that these things don't meet. And that's when the RFI comes out, and the RFI results in a clarification, which becomes a change order, which becomes a delay claim, and then people like you become so important because document analysis and document retrieval is so important in any claim. Yeah. I mean, the construction industry is probably one industry that will never get away from it being document intensive. The big change is the medium of documentation. It used to be all paper documents, right? So plans and specs came in a big roll in a tube, and change orders were mailed by paper. Then we became PDFs. Now it's all electronically hosted stuff, but still it's a document. It's just an e-document instead of a paper document. Yeah. There's probably more documentation today because it's so easy to create documentation. Yeah. You know, it's a point click send instead of a typed on letterhead type of thing. Well, we laughed that the dryer, the dryer eats the socks. And so we're like, well, the internet probably ate that because, we're always like auditing everything and verifying and organizing. And so one of the things we thought was alarming was that there is technology out there that will link the cuts to the details electronically. And so on their website, they say we only guarantee 18% of this information to be complete, which we're like 18%. What about the other? Where's the rest of it? So that's why we do everything manually, and it does take us a little more time. But when we're linking those cuts of the details and we're going back with an audit trail and saying you're missing all this information, which are all the change orders. But you mentioned fast track. So our second project we did was a flash track, not fast, like flash track. It was a prison in Eloy, Arizona. We were like, what? It finished 3 months ahead of schedule. Because we were organized, everything was there, point click. The owner was like, wait a minute, I've never gotten back general condition money, but I just love your perspective because I always say you have the answer before you know the question. Yeah, the hypertrack, flash track construction anymore. The one thing that has changed in construction is the ability to fast track. And the company I just left, Burns & McDonnell, most of their work was done integrated design build or EPC construction, they called it, where the company designed it and built it. And so it was easy to start site work and grubbing and clearing and foundation work while they're still designing the rest of the project, and it really enhanced schedule. For an integrated firm, it's a little easier because, there are still those errors and omissions, but those get resolved behind the curtain by the firm without an RFI or a claim or a change order. But in traditional design build or design bid build, where you have two companies teaming up, there's still that in front of the curtain dispute that the owner sees, where there's an RFI and a bust in the documentation, and people get heated about whose fault it was, who should have seen it, and they start to look at the fine print in the contract documents. The contractor is supposed to study the plans and specs and point everything out to the AE firm upon discovery. Well, sometimes it doesn't get discovered until during construction. Yeah. And despite the best efforts to bid, you have trade subs bidding their trade packages, and they may not see everything. They're looking at their specific scope, right? Yeah. It's not until the field gets together when you see the sprinkler heads and the mechanical system conflict. Yeah. And that's because the sprinkler guy looked at his drawings and the mechanic guy looked at his drawings. Yeah. Well, another thing we found is that we do bidding dashboards, so we compile all the documents for the bidding dashboard. But what we found out is that one contractor might be bidding this, the other contractor's bidding this, and they never know really if everyone is bidding the same project, the same information. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's just like there's all these games that get played that we're like, hey, just bring it to the center, organize it. Everyone has accountability, and it's all right there. But yeah, we've seen so much, Bill. Oh my God, you and I could do a whole Netflix series on Are you kidding me? Yeah, no one would watch it, Shelley, except for contractors and lawyers. But yeah, we could do a Netflix series.
Yeah.
You know, the industry's changed so much. So I got out of architecture school in 1980. Everything was paper drawings then. We still used pencil drawings on paper to do design drawings, and sepia prints with overlays, and then it became, you know, CAD rendering. And you know, I didn't have any training on CAD equipment in architectural school in the 70s, but today everything's done electronically. But as a lawyer, you know, when a case got to litigation or claims, the client would bring the records in from the field. They would bring bankers boxes full of records and set them on your desk. And they had coffee stains on them, and they had, you know,
mustard,
worn edges, and file folders, and things were misfiled, and you had to search manually to find what you were looking for. Sometimes you never found it. Sometimes you found things you weren't looking for that were even more exciting. I'll never forget the first time a client came to me. It was a design firm, and we were in litigation. And I said, I need to see all your project files. And I was expecting to bring these bankers boxes, right, to set it on my desk. And the receptionist came in with a wad of floppy disks with a rubber band around them. I said, what are these? She goes, well, your client just dropped off the project records. I said, well, what's on them? She goes, I don't know. So I pulled them up, and every document correspondence was blank. It had no letterhead on it, and the date was today's date, because the date you opened it up was the date it populated the date. No signatures, no coffee stains. Everything looked like a draft document created today. I said, okay, send these back to the client. Tell them I need the actual records from the date they were created. Well, we don't do that anymore. We're a paperless office. And then you go from the floppy disks, now everything's e-filed. There's no such thing as a diskette anymore. Nobody has floppy disk readers or even DVD readers on their computers. So there's just a plethora of documentation. The benefit is what you do, Shelley. I mean, to be able to search documents electronically by search terms. And in litigation, they call it e-discovery. It's a whole burgeoning industry of consultants that help law firms to gather, store, host, and analyze documentation through electronic search engines. And it's really changed the industry remarkably. It's also added extensive costs if that documentation wasn't maintained electronically originally. You have to scan things in. So I'm curious, you and I talked about what you do now, and you actually in real time are hosting live documentation and putting it in the format that it needs to be searchable.
Yeah.
I just imagine as a construction litigator, you know, to be able to point and click and find the documentation that relates to that specific change order or whatever in seconds, as opposed to days or weeks manually, would be a game changer.
Yeah, we have changed the game for sure. It's been interesting. That again is a whole Netflix series, but not everyone's excited about that. You know, not everyone's excited that people get to be proficient and organized, and it's really been, I mean, it was so amazing when we started. We went directly to what we thought would be someone that would go, huh, where have you been all my life? And they were just like, wait a minute, you're spell checking? Yeah, because the searchability tool is so important. I mean, you need to be able to search this. Oh, okay. So we have discovered the risk is so great to play the game without us. It's so alarming. I mean, it's just like one of our contractors, they missed 400 light changes to the light fixtures. And so with us, you know, all the changes are denoted in color. And it was, I don't even remember the number. And so he was like, oh my gosh, you solved the biggest problem. And we're like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, we're going to support you all your projects. And he's like, but you're going to get into my change order game. And I'm like, well, you have to manage the risk, right? Are you willing to spend all this money on missing something and litigate and lose? Or are you willing to say, hey, I'm going to do this with my professional expertise and do my job? So it's finding those people that say, hey, I want to do this. Like we built Burns and McDonnell World Headquarters. And I mean, I went in there, I was like, wow, we didn't build it, we supported it. And it's just, you know, finding the people that are willing to raise the white flag and say, we surrender, we want to do this right. We don't want to have sleepless nights and, I mean, lose all their money. You lose all your money.
So I think the real benefit, and probably something you deal with in marketing your services, is people are looking for ways to cut overhead costs.
Yeah.
And what they don't realize is there may be an upfront cost to have you as a consultant. On the back end, when you're in claims litigation, you've got a team of paralegals searching through records. That's a cost of the project that you would eliminate by you putting you in the front of the project as opposed to the back end.
Yeah.
So sure, there's an added cost to do what you do, but in the long run, you save the client and all the parties money by having the documentation searchable, housed in one central location. You know,
organized.
Probably,
but you know what's
probably some paralegals that may lose their jobs because of what you do, but.
Well, I presented to Zurich, and the gatekeeper at Zurich said, "You just cost my daughter her job because you just streamlined everything." And I was like, that's a problem. I'm like, I'll give her a job. And he's like, oh, no, you wouldn't be able to afford to pay her. Right. And I'm like, well, is she making more money because her daddy's Zurich? Or, I mean, what is the deal? So, I mean, we're definitely running into gatekeepers, and we're definitely running into, I just got off the phone with the Florida Department of Transportation, the secretary this morning, and he was just like, you know, blown away with what we're doing and how efficient it makes the organization.
Yeah.
But we just got to keep on telling our story.
Something we didn't talk about, I'll just put this out there on the podcast, is one of my biggest pet peeves as general counsel at Burns & McDonnell was that in any litigation we had, all the documentation had to be hosted by a third-party host during the discovery phase. What that means to your listeners is that in litigation, the plaintiff produces their records electronically, the defendant produces their records electronically, and they produce them to each other to be searchable. Well, there's a trust factor there. You know, are they going to mess with my documents when they have them electronically? And so a third-party vendor hosts them on a device or in the cloud or something like that. And it's simply a passive process where they're searchable then from this third party's database. But the hosting fees were outrageous. I was getting bigger bills from the hosting company per month than I was the law firm. And it was just, and for them, it's just passive income because they're hosting the records and doing nothing but serving as a temporary holding place that the clients have to pay for until discovery is completed. Then you stop the hosting fees. If you're able to put your documents in a searchable place that is safe and secured, even during the litigation phase, and I'm sure there's a fee for you to house those records and store them, but some of these hosting fees, companies are just getting outrageous, terrible. And the parties don't know what I'm talking about until you've felt it and paid those bills. You're paying $50,000 a month, and I said, for what? $50,000 for what? It's on a computer or a cloud somewhere, and they're doing nothing but holding it. This is ridiculous.
But they're not holding it as yours holding it, and the fee. I mean, it's so cheap. I don't want to give away our stuff, but yeah, that is the most affordable thing, the cloud storage, you know, I mean, but every time we go in and do a pricing thing, like we just, we're meeting with the state of Kansas again today, and they said, well, your fee alone is what they're asking us. I don't remember the exact number, but so they're trying to get a, the state has to retain these documents for how many ever years. Yeah. Well, they never can find them anyway, so it's kind of a joke, but I'm like, oh, well, here's all your stuff. But it was amazing. He goes, they're 10 times more than what you guys do on a project, and everything would be organized. I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. It's organized. But gosh, I mean, your perspective is priceless to us, Bill, because we're not your people. Yeah. You know?
Well, and that's, you brought up another point is how long do you hold documents? That was a big issue with every client I had when I was in private practice. It was an issue with Burns & McDonnell is what's the company's document retention policy? And the rule of thumb used to be what's the statute of repose in your project state? And for those that don't know what a statute of repose is, that's the period of time the law says you can sue for a construction or design defect from the date of completion of the project, substantial completion typically. It's usually 6 to 10 years. And my rule of thumb was if it's 10 years, then it's 10 years plus 1. We'll hold the documents for 11 years because you figure there could be a suit in that 9th or 10th year and you want to make sure the documents don't disappear before you get them. So let's host them for 11 years. Well, if a company destroyed their records, pursuant to that policy, then a court couldn't accuse them of destroying evidence because it's a policy. But today it's easy to keep documents forever because they're electronic. I mean, I'm talking about when documents were in boxes in a cave and rolled in tubes. There was a cost to holding them, and they get damp and damaged, and so you pitch them after a period of time. Now you can just hold documents forever somewhere in some format. The challenge is that the medium in which they're stored changes frequently, and I don't know how you're keeping abreast of that, Shelley, but just give you an example. The FBI in Kansas City has an office up by Briarcliff, and that I took a tour of that office one time, and they have all these old computer readers. They can read a 9-inch floppy disk, a 5.5-inch floppy disk, a DVD, a CD, whatever, and they keep these old computers because records are stored on different medium, but the medium changes every year, and so you don't have the ability to read the records on the database in which they're stored. So the FBI keeps one of every computer of every vintage, so they have that ability to go in and search the documents. With you today, you know, and it'll change, but the mediums the records are stored in don't require a reader anymore. There's nothing, a tape or a reel-to-reel or a diskette. It's all electronic bytes and bits, right, that you store, and you can pull it up easily.
Well, you know, the thing also, like the BIM model, so Revit 2015 doesn't talk to 2018. So if you have to go back and look at the Revit model, well, then you have to update your license, which is whatever dollar figure, to go back and try to view this model. So we take all those models and turn them into 3D PDF. So they're actually manageable, and then that's the 50-year archive that Adobe warrants for the next 50 years. So we do a lot of trying, no, not that, try is not a word here. We're curious a lot about making sure that we can meet the needs of our clients, because they're, you know, they're head down doing their thing. We're like, hey, we want to be your right hand over here going, this is here, we can help you with this. But we want people like you to, like you, Bill, to be able to be like, here's a resource, talk to Bill. If you have a question, talk to Bill, you know, because they don't know who to trust. It's like, it's just been so malaligned. And so it's that trusting, hey, we can verify that this person is someone that you can trust and give you great advice. But it's, again, it's been a journey of like just amazing.
Well, I tell you, every general counsel I talk to, and I've talked to dozens, hundreds probably in my career, everyone's concern now is the ease in which it is to communicate electronically. So we have young millennials and Gen X and Yers that are coming to work with these things, and they're used to on the weekend doing click, click, send to their friends. Then they get into work, and it's click, click, send on the computer that's sent from your company's server. Maybe has a company footer on it, but it's not just a social media chat anymore. It's an official document. To tell people, think of it as if it was on company letterhead and you were signing your signature with a wet pen still. Now nobody does that anymore because it's the click, click, send generation. But what I was getting to is every general counsel's nightmare is what's being sent this second in my company somewhere by some computer, by some person. Who thinks of it as this, when in court, it's not that. It's as if it was on letterhead. Because I've seen it and I've done it. Lawyers blow these things up on a big screen and show it to the arbitrator, mediator, or jury and say, did you write this on June the 7th, 2021? Yes, I did. And did you mean what you said there? Because people are in a bad mood. They type things quickly. They don't think about it until they hit send. It's out there forever. You capture all that now, and that's sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good. But you know, you take the good with the bad. You just hopefully train your staff on thinking about that, and we would do intensive training of our staff. Think before you click send. Just read it again, calm down, maybe go get a cup of coffee, walk back to the screen, look at it one more time, make sure it's what you want to send out. Well, we did a presentation the other day to this huge company, and they said this prevents bad actors. And we're like,
oh, we've seen the bad actors. I mean, the emails that say, hey, change this document. We need you to change this, change these meeting minutes. And it's just like, does the company know that you're doing those things?
Oh my gosh.
Because I mean, we do, because we're the gatekeeper. You can't do that anymore. So it's always a quandary if we go to the CEO and say, yeah, here's what your company did. Is that your policy, or is that a bad actor? Because we eliminate the bad actors. Like, you can't do that anymore. But sometimes it might be a company policy to say, just change what you need to change. And, you know, but some of the things are federal crimes. Changing contracts is a federal crime on a project, especially a government project.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We've seen that. Well, I know.
But maybe naivety, you know, of the young people, or maybe not even young people. People just haven't been properly trained or schooled. Maybe they've come from another company. A lot of lateral hirings going on. You don't know what their experience was at their previous employer. They bring that culture to your company. And is that your company's culture? Did you get a bad apple in the bunch all of a sudden, and now you've got to deal with that? Yeah. Well, I invite you to my office. I told Dominic, I go, Bill's going to come down. We'll have the fancy coffee pot out. We have flying pigs all around, because that's our whole model. Because when we started our business, everybody's like, oh, that will never work. Why? And it's just like, oh, all of our pigs have flown. So anyway, I would love for you to come down on your day off. Yeah. And have a cup of coffee. We could take you to our favorite taco place. We're in Kansas City, so everything's tacos here. That's great. But yeah, well, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to having further conversations. And again, enjoy your day off. Thanks, Shelley. Appreciate it. Good luck to you, and good luck to all your viewers. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.